And so you've now written Give Birth Like a Feminist. And what was the aim with writing that after you'd written Positive Birth Book?
Well, I think it was just a coming together for me of like, why have I got into this crazy place in the first place? So it was kind of, after the Positive Birth Book was published, it became very successful. And because of that, I got a literary agent. And we sat and had a conversation the first time I met her, and she was like, well, tell me about your ideas for the next book. So I kind of like, I went to her with a sort of scribbled back of an envelope, you know, of like about 5 or 6 different ideas, and right at the bottom I'd written in like really small writing, Give Birth Like a Feminist, thinking, I think that's a really dumb idea. And when I got, after I'd gone through them all, she said, that's the one we should do. So I was like, okay. So it was really because of her, and I think, again, with the beauty of hindsight, I think it was partly Me Too that had happened about a year before that conversation, the Me Too movement, #MeToo, that had kind of started to, again, shift that conversation, and people who were inside the birth world completely were like, yeah, birth's a feminist issue, but outside the birth world, those people like literary agents and publishers, I think they were able to see it as a feminist issue and see, yes, that there is a place for this book in the mainstream because of Me Too, because of the sort of new ways of thinking about women's autonomy that Me Too brought.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, was, you know, calling it Give Birth Like a Feminist is quite a statement. To say to a wider audience that birth is a feminist issue. Yeah. But that was your first idea. You came with, it's got to be Give Birth Like a Feminist.
Yeah, well, the title was my idea, but there was rumblings for quite a long time, because when you go through the process of writing a book, you sort of do a proposal and that goes out to publish. And I think some publishers did say no to it because of the title and because of the sort of, you know, I can't really compute those, you know, not everybody was ready to put those two ideas together, let's say. And then I think the publishers who did publish it did have conversations that I wasn't part of about the title, which is what they do, and that's fine. But I think they were sort of thinking, is this going to put people off? And that's fair enough, that's their job to ask those questions. But obviously people do get worried about the word feminist sometimes, don't they? And it does make people think, oh, is this going to be kind of all aggressive or something, and I'm not going to like it? And but I think, again, the world is moving quite rapidly in that area. Yeah. You know, since Me Too, and we've had people like Meghan Markle putting on her Buckingham Palace biography that she's a feminist, and so people are using that word in a way that they weren't 5 years ago, really, and in the mainstream, and it's become a bit more palatable for people, hopefully.
Yeah. And I mean, the words that we use around birth is one of the themes of the Positive Birth Book, and what you write generally is that we use certain words around birth that are unhelpful. We can use other words that are helpful. So why do you think that words and vocabulary around birth are important?
Well, I think words, you know, obviously words are what I like and I'm good at. So I notice words as a writer, and I think, you know, their words are like a sort of a tip of an iceberg, really, aren't they? So one of the things that I noticed first as a pregnant woman 11 years ago, pregnant for the first time, and also like after I'd had my baby, when I was hearing other people tell their birth stories, friends, family, people at the toddler group, was I kept hearing I wasn't allowed or they didn't let me. And those words kept sticking out for me. And I was thinking, this is really interesting, because the way, what happened was that I went past my due date, and I actually went to sort of, I think I was induced in the end, but I was induced at 42 weeks and 3 days, I think it was, or it might have been 2 days. And whenever I told my whole birth story, you know, like, and this is amazing, that was amazing, this happened, that happened, and then I get to that bit and they were like, 42 weeks and 3, that was the thing that struck everyone, like, I didn't think you were allowed to do that. So it really struck me that people had this confusion about what you were actually allowed to do with your own body, and yet that was kind of at odds for me with like progress that had been made in areas of other women's lives. You know, this was the 21st century. We were quite a long way on from the 60s and, you know, women's liberation. Yeah. It's like, wow, that's amazing that we're still talking about birth in terms of what we're allowed and not allowed to do. And yeah, you know, in the book, I cover a whole other range of phrases like failure to progress, which sometimes gets written on people's birth notes, you know, incompetent cervix, my woman in room 3, good girl is a phrase that sometimes is used, you know, healthcare professional to women. And yeah, there's lots of phrases and words around birth that I think it's probably time that we challenged. And delivery is another one, actually, that a lot of people hate that, you know, because, and I don't mind it so much if it's in the context of women delivering their babies. So if I ever do use it, I try to use it in that way. But what is really awful is when you hear the story of like the woman who gave birth, you know, by the side of the road, and the dad heroically delivered the baby, or the midwives delivered the baby. And a lot of people say, well, babies are born, pizzas are delivered.
Yeah.
But also, if anyone does the delivering, it's definitely the woman.
Yeah.